what's next? Oh yeah, somebody asked about the direction in which I attach my panels. Here, let me scoot this back just there so that we can see. Now in my case, you can see I ran my panels longitudinally along the length of the RV, and that's what you typically see people doing. It's the most common way for a number of reasons. I think obviously it just makes kind of logical sense to run things along the length of your rig. It also helps because of the space, right? If you can take it, you can push them farther to the outside, give you more space to be able to walk around up here on your rig, which is definitely nice to do. And also you have the top of your rig has a curvature to it, and when you run them lengthways this way, it allows you to kind of have them go along the curvature in a way that is potentially less problematic. And I've got a perfect example of that up here in front, where you notice I have, in this case, I have a panel going across the roof. So these are the two new panels that I've added since I did the previous video. These are both 200 watt panels, and you can kind of see the difference in size here. There's a 100 watt and there's a 200 watt class. They're actually 210 watt, but I would call it a 200 watt class panel. You can see that I've got this one run that way, and this one I've run across. Let me see if I can get you close enough here you can see what I'm talking about. You can kind of see here on the end where that doesn't go all the way down. Now there's plenty of sealant underneath it to where I'm not actually running into problem, but you can see it gaps just a little bit, and you can really see it when you get back here a lot easier. You can actually see how, you know, the roof curves, and it was kind of hard to get that panel adjusted. Now, does it work? Yeah, it works. It actually works just fine. And depending on how your RV roof layout is, it may actually make a lot of sense to have you do panels laid out across like that, especially if you're using something shorter like one of these 100 watts. You could take 100 watt panels and turn them sideways and probably get two to go across, but you can see in the case of that 200 watt panel, there's no way I could have got two of them to go across that way. So kind of an answer question why people end up laying their panels out long ways on your roof. I think that kind of answers that question with a demonstration. All right, let's come back over here and see how we're doing. Okay, more questions. Okay, another person asked, a few people actually asked about cable runs. Where do you run your cables for attachment of your panels? Now, let me undo this panel mount. Oh, this is another question I guess somebody asked was, let me turn this down so you can see what it is I'm doing here. Somebody asked, man, how do these screws stay tight? The answer is yes. I do get up on the roof before I go on trips, and I make sure that all of these bolts and wing nuts and such are still tight, just so I'm not driving down the road with loose things. Hold on just a second here. Obviously that would be a bad thing, but the truth of the matter is these things stay really tight. Pretty much every time I've gotten up on the roof to check the tightness of them, how tight they are, I've not had to tighten them. They've been, all of them have been tight, both before and after long trips. So that is another advantage. But again, let me go ahead and take these off here, and I'll tilt this up and I'll show you what I'm talking about. All right, so cable routing. What I've been able to do, let's see if this is showing the right thing here, so move this in. So what I've been able to do is I take these, the cables coming from the panels, and I actually run them up underneath all of the panels up along here that actually keeps them up off of the roof. So you can see I'm actually using the mounts and the panels themselves as kind of that cable tray. So that has been working well for me. Oh look, I got a wasp's nest over here, and I have to take care of that. Let's do this really quick. Well, you're probably not seeing this, but consider yourself lucky. Had a wasp nest up underneath there, which gives me something that I need to think about maybe is come up and check these for wasp nests. Anyway, that allows for pretty good and pretty clean cable routing. Another thing that I have done is just run the cables up underneath here as well, between the roof deck and the bottom there as well. Now in cases like this where I'm going in between segments, I just have run the cables out up underneath. Now I've tried to think of different ways to do this. Like I thought about flipping that over and maybe zip tying it or attaching it to the side, and I still may yet do that, but I really haven't needed to. If you notice up there, you can see that I've got the cable just running across the top, and you know what I find? It's not really a problem. It doesn't flap around like you might think it would. It doesn't wear the roof. It's turning out to be okay. Now somebody, actually again, a few people have suggested in the comments that maybe you could run your cables down the actual middle of the channel, and that may actually be true if you were to use the thicker channel. Now this is the channel that's about an inch thick. I think it's like 13/16 or something like that. I don't remember the exact measurement, but it's not that deep, and I don't know if you can kind of see here, but when you put the cone nut in, it pretty much takes you all the way to the bottom of the actual channel, so there's not enough room. But if you were to go with that actual thicker stuff, which is about an inch and a half, actually it's more than that. I think it's probably closer to 2 inches deep. Really, it's about yay deep. That would give you a lot of extra room that you could actually run all of your cables down inside the strut channel as well. Now, I'm not sure if I want to do that way, because that adds yet another bit of height. That's another inch or so of height that's going to add here. And I do like how this, even though these are pretty tall themselves, they still keep everything relatively close to the roof. Likewise, because I'm running all my cables up in underneath here anyway, I'm not sure I would get a huge advantage to that. The only option maybe is if I'm going between, if I had big gaps in here and I needed to go from one down to another one somewhere else, and there was a big gap, that might make sense to run it in that strut channel. But in my personal experience, that didn't necessarily work out as a good idea for me. But it's something to think about. In your implementation of this, it might make sense for you to use the actual gaps in the strut channel and to go with that thicker strut channel to do that. Okay, what's the next one? Oh yeah, this is a big one. A lot of people have asked about this. And the question is regarding drainage. It says, how does drainage work on your roof? Now, in my case, drainage is not an issue at all, and that's because I have more of a traditional profile of roof where, you know, I've got the high spot up there and then it tilts down here. And so in my case, water hits the roof, it runs back and then off to the sides, or if it's up front, it runs off the forward and off to the sides. So in my case, drainage is not an issue whatsoever, and it's because, again, I have that angle on my roof. But there are people who have rigs that have more of a flat profile, like the full profile rig where it doesn't tilt. You still have the curvature on the top, but you don't have the angle off to the front and the back. And I can see how in those situations drainage might be an issue. And so a number of people have posed some suggestions in the comments about what might be some ideas. Now, some people have talked about taking and putting spacers underneath between the strut channel. Let me tilt down here so you can see what I'm talking about here. between the strut channel and the roof deck to lift it off the roof just a little bit. And I think there's some merit to that, but there's also some things that I'm not so sure about. My personal thing is I actually like having, in my situation, the strut channel flush to the roof, because I think that gives you even more structural strength, because you've got the entire length of the strut channel resting on the roof, and it gives you that much more strength against lifting off the roof. So you're not just putting all of the stress on where you have it actually screwed or bolted to the roof. How much that really works out in reality, I don't know. So some people have suggested maybe putting a couple of washers or something up underneath each one of your screw points, and that would lift it off the roof and give you some drainage. That's probably not a bad idea. I personally might want to go with something a little more elegant, shall I say, than just washers, like finding something to like maybe some aluminum blocks or something like that you could then drill through. You could basically bolt the block down, or maybe you could go some with the what's that stuff called? I knew I was going to have a brain fart on some of these things. It's shaped like an X. Somebody will jump into the comment and say, "Hey, dummy, it's this," and like, yeah, no. Anyway, the aluminum stuff, you could take some of that and maybe bolt that down and then attach this to that. Something more elegant. That might work. That might work really well. In that case, I might want to go every roof truss to give it a little bit more strength, which means you're putting a few more holes in your roof than this, where I was able to go in most cases every other roof truss. In the case of flat profile roofs, obviously that makes a lot more sense. In the case of things like motor coaches or Airstreams or something where your roof is not a roof membrane, where it's metal, it makes it a little bit more difficult too as well, right? Because now you're having two different things you need to attach to. So having something other than, especially if you're going to use that VHB tape to be your method of attachment, you probably would want to have multiple risers all the way down, and then maybe even bolting into those risers and then just using the VHB tape to stick that to the roof. I don't know. Those are some ideas. Now, one of the ideas that I actually came up with, and I may actually consider doing this again, even on an RV that has a tilt like this, is you actually take the channel itself, and before you attach it, you actually cut some notches in the bottom of the channel, maybe a quarter-inch wide or something, where you take a couple of saw cuts across the bottom. Now, the advantage to that, as opposed to just cutting them in sections, is that if you cut them into sections, you don't have one continuous run that you can have. So ultimate flexibility, you lose that ultimate flexibility. You also lose some of the extra strength of having the long pieces, the extra rigidity of the longer pieces working against the roof. But having the slots or cut across gives you the ability to maintain the strength of the big piece. You still have use of the entire top of the strut channel to screw things into, but you have these, again, notches cut every couple of feet maybe across the bottom that would allow water to flow from one side of the strut to the next. So right now I think that's the method that I find the most appealing. Again, I'm gonna have to do a little bit of experimentation and testing of that, but if I were to do this again and I needed to worry about drainage issues because of like a flat profile roof, I think that's the method that I would probably use. I would still attach it the same way that I did, but I would cut those crosswise notches across the bottom every couple of feet and use that as my drainage points from one side of the channel to the other. So that's the idea I think that I've come up with that I'm liking so far best. Again, I haven't experimented with that, but if some of you do decide to experiment with that, let us know how it works, because again, I think that would be great to share with the rest of the community. All right, I know this is going to be kind of long. It's a long video, but I had a lot of questions and I want to make sure I get these covered. Another question is, how do you attach the panels to the strut channel? Let me go show some examples of that here. So you can kind of see that here in where I've got here, where you've got these cone nuts. We'll bring this up here so you can see it. So if you notice the profile, the cone nuts kind of have those little rounded pieces here. The idea is you take this cone nut, let me point this down so you can see what it is that I'm doing here. You take this cone nut, is that in the center enough? Yeah, and you pop it in here, and then you can twist it using those rounded portions, and that's what allows you to kind of twist, but you can't go any farther than that because it hits one of the square portions, and that allows you to put where you want it, and then you can move this cone nut basically wherever you want it to be. And then you take, in this case, I strongly recommend you get the cone nuts that have the 1/4 inch hole in them, and then you just get your little 1/4 inch bolts. Now this isn't the ones that I used. I actually used some that were electro galvanized, and they're actually longer than this. I think this one's a 5/8 inch, and I think you need about a 1 inch to be able to get all the way through and in. But anyway, then you take that and you can go through and screw that right into the cone nut, and it holds it in there really tightly. Now, I always take and put a lock washer and then a flat washer down, and then I put that through, and you can kind of see that right up here. You can see how I've got the flat washer and the lock washer and then the bolt, and then it screws right down into the actual cone nut. Now, the question I've had on these is, well, where do you get those cone nuts? Well, they actually come in packages like this. You find them next to, typically, you know, if you're going to go to like a Lowe's or a Home Depot, they're going to be in a box or something, or on the shelves right next to where the actual strut channel is. And they come here in packages of 5. Okay, and I think one of these packages is like $6 or something, $6.50. So it comes out to being about $1 a piece-ish for each of the cone nuts. So there's what the package looks like, and that's where you find them, is typically on the shelves next to where the actual strut channel itself is. All right. Let's see, what are some of the other questions? Had a question on wind resistance. Is there a lot of wind resistance with these? To be honest, no. I really have not experienced any additional wind resistance, even to those up there on the front that are catching the most of the wind. I haven't noticed any difference in how the trailer pulls. I haven't noticed any difference in fuel efficiency. I'm sure there's some, because there's got to be some, but it's not enough that you actually need to worry about. Now, obviously, the taller they go, the more you may run into. Another reason why I like them as low as they are. But no, I haven't had any problems with wind resistance. Tilt that up just a little more. Okay. We already answered this one. How tight are these screws, the wing nuts, whatever, on these mounts? Really tight. I've never had problems with them coming loose. I come up here all the time, tighten them, and I've never really had to tighten them. Oh, another question was what size panels to use. So you can see in my situation, I've got 100 watts and I've got 200 watt, 100 watt class and 200 watt class panels. Let me tilt this up a little bit so you can see those up in front a little bit better. So there's the 200 watt panels that are up there. If I were to do this again, I would go with 200 watt class panels. That's what I would use. I think you get your best bang for your buck with those 200 watt class panels. Now, some people have asked, have you tried residential panels? And well, so for example, as you can see, I have solar on my house. I have those big residential panels. Could you put those big 300 watt class residential panels up on your RV? Yes, maybe. To be honest, I think you would be challenged in most cases, unless you have a really long rig, finding enough roof space for those those residential class panels. That's why I think 200 watt panels are kind of the best bang for your buck. You get the most power in the most space because you're not getting much longer, you are a bit wider, and you still have room to walk around on the roof. Not to mention the fact that if you factor in the cost of the mounting system, which by the way is another one of the questions, let me bring that up. Somebody asked how much does it cost to mount all of this, and I just did some rough back of the napkin type of totaling some things up, and it comes out to, for a 10-foot section, it's going to cost you about $190 for a 10-foot section. That's both sides of the panel, or sorry, both sides of the strut channel. That is going with the electro galvanized plus powder coating. That includes mounts, all the hardware. Comes out to about $190 for a 10-foot section of this strut channel. If you look here, you could get 300 watt panels on a 10-foot section, or you can get easily two 200 watt panels. And seeing as you're paying about $1 a watt on solar panels right now, which puts 100 watt panels right around $100. I know you can get them a little bit cheaper than that, but right around $100. That puts 200 watt panels right around $200, a little bit below. I think you get your best bang for your buck mounting hardware cost versus the amount of solar that you're mounting with 200 watt panels. And so again, if I were to do this again, I would use 200 watt panels. As a matter of fact, I'm going to be upgrading these things over time. I'm actually going to take these two on the back, the one on the back on this side and the one on the back on this other side, and I'm going to upgrade those to 200 watt panels because they're the easiest ones that I can get to, and I don't have to worry about respacing everything out right off the bat. But I think ultimately I will migrate to have all 200 watt panels. So that's what I would recommend when it comes to the panel size. Okay. All right, I think that covers all of the questions that I put down that I've been getting in the videos. I've talked a little bit more detail about how to actually attach these. Oh, actually there was one more that I forgot to point out. Notice how, let me see if I can come over here and show this a little bit easier. Notice how when I've mounted these, I've actually pushed the panel all the way to the outside, and I've left the gap in here on the 100 watt panels. On the case of the 200 watt panels, and I don't know how well you can see that right up there, but that 200 watt panel pretty much goes the full width of the mounting bit. But in the case of 100 watt panels, I pushed them to the outside. I did have a viewer comment saying, hey, what if you were to take and push this from the outside over to the inside, and that would give you easier access to the screws or the bolts or the tightening knobs, so that when you were to go angle these things, you'd have easier access to get those. And you know what, I think that's actually a pretty good idea. I might have actually done that differently the first time around had I actually thought about that. And so that was a great idea that, you know, forget the viewer who left that comment, but you know who you are if you're watching this. Thank you for that comment. I think that's probably a good idea. On the case of the 100 watt panels, you may run into some potential issues, like up here with shading issues, because it puts your panels a bit closer to like your air conditioner, but that may not as well. But as far as ease of use, but that does bring me to tilting these into the sun. You know what? I have not done it yet. I've had this for over a year now, and not once have I actually tilted these things up to get better sun. Now, does that change the fact that I'm not happy that I used these tiltable brackets? No, I would use these hands down again without a question, because it just gives me ease of installation, ease of access, ease of use. But I haven't actually tilted it. Would I do it? Am I glad that I have it because I could? Yes, absolutely. Will I do it in the future? Maybe. But up to this point, I haven't actually done it. So having ease of access to those has been kind of a bit of a non-issue to me. Other than that, I think that pretty much sums up what it is that I wanted to cover here. I covered all the questions. Again, thank you for all of the views and all of the comments and all of the questions and the support. Please share with your friends and family and other people. Link this into other places and share this, because again, I think it's a great idea, and we've got the feedback from other people that support that as well. So again, continue watching our videos. I got a lot more coming out now that the whole COVID thing's over. I'm able to kind of get back into producing more of these videos. So keep watching, like, subscribe, all of that good stuff, and we'll see you in the next video.